Today is the story of tragedy and triumph. From having her arm amputated to living a life that she didn't know existed prior to the accident, today is going to show you that no matter what your situation is, it's always what you make of it. Let's go. Welcome back, everybody, to the Weekly Intention, where we give you the insights to unlock your full potential. I am so pumped up to introduce today's guest, but before I do, I have one ask. If this episode helps you in any way, share it. I'm trying to be a light for people. I'm trying to help people out, and the best way I can do that is if people see it. So make sure to share it. And with that being said, let's get into it. The woman next to me is someone I've known for a very long time. I'd say probably 6-7 years now. It's crazy. I think both of our lives, kind of how they've taken shape, which is really, really cool. And it's someone that I've always considered to be a very strong-willed, positive, and focused person. And I think that in the last few years, she's become more of a true and great leader. And I think that was kind of God's calling in your life. So I couldn't be more excited to share this story today. Welcome so much, Diana. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah, it's going to be a good story. And, you know, sometimes with these stories, I start all the way in the beginning of life, and I don't think we need to do that here today, but for those of you that don't know, Diana had her arm amputated in a very tragic accident. I knew her before that had happened. I'd just seen you, in your day-to-day life. I know you've always been like a very positive person, always focused on fitness, had a lot of friends, just a good person, and had a pretty good life, prior to all this. Yeah. But one thing, I'm curious about for everybody listening, do you feel like you had a clear, defined purpose before all of this happened? Or how did you think about life prior to all of this happening?
Yeah, that's a great question because, to be honest, I was just focused on being a good human at the time. I was, trying to work hard at my job, trying to stay fit, trying to drink enough water, trying to call my grandma back, just trying to do the right things. But I would say no, there wasn't really a very clearly defined purpose for me at that time. I think it was just, how do I make the most of my life and do the right things that's going to propel me into the world to be successful? Everything that comes along with that, trying to buy a house, trying to, put myself out there to find a good man, all those kinds of things that a 20-something-year-old focuses on.
Yeah, so. just navigating life in general and just trying to be successful, which is it's pretty hard in its own to do. Did you find yourself that you were wanting more, like in doing all those things? Did you think that something was missing? Did you feel like, hey, I'm doing all these things, but there's still something that is not fitting together? Yeah,
absolutely. Like, I could have never predicted, obviously, that this was going to happen to me, but something did feel like it was like a missing piece. There was just something that was off, that was just not clicking. Like, I don't know. I was pretty much raised by my dad and my brother, here and there as well. And it just felt like I was trying very hard to be like them, which was, they're both wonderful and great role models, but it wasn't following the path. I don't know what you want to call it, but the path that I felt like I was on was just not the right one. Something was missing, to your point. There's just, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but totally.
Like you had like, people always go after like their parents or people that they know, because it's like, that's how you model yourself. Yeah. It's like, what else do you know? It's like, oh, I've seen my parents be successful doing this. I should do this type thing. Yep. And then like trying to figure out a way to break outside of it. Not that it's bad. Like what your parents are doing is never bad, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily right for you. So it's like, how do you even find what that is? It's hard enough, like you said, just doing the things that you want to do, let alone like finding like why you're here on this earth. And that's such like a scary question to figure out. So yeah, I just was really, really curious, because I think a lot of people think that they have to have a purpose right now. Yeah. And it puts a lot of pressure. I know it put a ton of pressure on me, like every day. Type deal. So I thought it was just like an important thing to clarify.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It wasn't always obvious.
Yeah. So I want to talk a lot about the accident, because I think it's important to talk about the struggles that you had went through and just kind of like walk people through like how such a tough thing can happen in your life and like how you can rebound from that and like how you recrafted that into your story. So I'm going to ask you some questions throughout, but you know this part of it like way better than I do. So I'll just like kind of let you tell it like,
Sure.
Where were you when it happened? What were you doing? And what overall just happened that day?
Yeah. So, my husband's best friend, we were celebrating his birthday. We went camping up in the mountains of Arizona. And, you know, we're frequent campers. It's not anything out of the ordinary for us to do that. And so a bunch of people came with us up there, and somebody brought a side-by-side. And for those that don't know what a side-by-side, it's just kind of a utility vehicle. It's kind of the way I describe it, I know people are going to be like, that is the worst description, but
like a Can-Am.
Like a Can-Am, yes, or like kind of a mix between a golf cart and a four-wheeler.
Yeah.
Utility vehicle. Anyway. And so, you know, we got up there Friday night. We were all hanging out, met some new people. It was just overall a good time. We had the dogs with us, just enjoying ourselves, right? It was a summer night in Arizona, getting out of the heat. And so the following day, Saturday, we woke up, had breakfast, was hanging out, you know, grilling, playing bags, you know, your typical camping trip, right?
It's the regular day.
And we decided that we wanted to go in the side-by-side. And so we hopped in. Girls and I hopped in. It was myself and 3 other girls. What's interesting and what I tell a lot, what I tell often about this story is just how this one decision could have changed my entire life. And I'll tell you why. We got in the side-by-side and it wouldn't start.
Wow.
And we got out of the side-by-side. Okay? And then
wow.
One of the boys came over. I don't know who it was. They fixed it. We got back in the side-by-side. And then we pulled out. So it's crazy to think that if that vehicle just like didn't work, my life would have been completely different. I say the same about my seatbelt. You know, I put my seatbelt on as soon as I got in. It was broken. Like the seatbelt was broken. It like barely latched, but I got it to latch because seatbelts are so important. Like wear your seatbelt all the time, no matter what. If it's a 2-minute trip, wear your seatbelt. I'm going to mom everybody right now. Trust me, just do it.
You should always wear your seatbelt.
Yeah, moral of the story, guys. So anyway, I strapped myself in and we pulled out of the campsite. We made a left. And we started going down the forest road. It was very remote, not even cell service, not even like any real campers around. And so it became very apparent quickly that the girl that was driving just wasn't sure how to drive it, or maybe she was sure and she just decided she wanted to drive fast. I don't know. And I'm not going to, assume.
Driving
either.
reckless?
Yeah. Just driving really fast. At one point I looked down at the speedometer and we were going like 44 miles an hour. And we approached a bend. And we went around it far too fast, and the side-by-side flipped onto the passenger side where I was sitting, and it pinned me between the ground and the side-by-side.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So did it fully roll over like a tumble, or did it just sit in the side and your arm was like trapped underneath it, like laying sideways?
Yeah, so it flipped on the right side, right? And then just kind of like skid to a stop.
Oh,
it didn't like,
Oh my God. So it didn't just like at one point do it. It was like you were pinned there.
Yeah.
God, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sorry for the.
No, you're crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, in that moment I knew exactly what happened. My arm was still attached. I can tell it was, but I could also tell like what had happened. I wasn't naive to that.
Could you feel it anymore? Did you have like feeling in that hand anymore? Or did it feel like the feeling was just completely cut out of the arm?
I don't know what I felt, to be honest.
Like,
I didn't feel pain.
Yeah.
I know that. I think it was just adrenaline crazy, and so I knew that, when they when I got out from underneath it, I had to hold my arm up. Like I couldn't just like let it go. What's interesting is that my sweatshirt that I was wearing didn't rip. So I couldn't even see what happened, but I just could tell. I just knew something was wrong. I said, when it happened, you know, my arm is not attached to my body anymore. Like I said that out loud to the girls so they knew how severe it was.
Jesus. How did they react to that? Like, what did they say? Were they like I imagine just as much in shock as you were almost.
Well, they had their own injuries.
Okay.
Luckily, not nearly as severe as mine. One of the girls broke her wrist, and one of the other girls got, she ultimately had to have some stitches in her hip. But they were the ones that flipped the side-by-side back upright. So, I mean, they knew it was bad. There was blood, right? So there was certainty that it was pretty severe. What's interesting and what I think was an angel literally sent this to me in the moment of the accident. Like I was saying, it was very remote. There was nobody around, no cell phone. In that moment, when the side-by-side was flipped up and I was just kind of getting my bearings, like literally not even a minute after it happened, a van pulled up out of nowhere and opened the back of the van. And two of the girls jumped in, and the van brought them to the campsite to get my husband.
And you're in the middle. You're in the middle of nowhere, like no cell service, nobody around. Like
nothing.
It could have been a very, very bad, even worse than it was. It could have been far worse.
Yeah, I was told I could have bled to death if I didn't get where I needed to be as quickly as I did.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's really heavy. That's really heavy. I mean, that is like divine intervention. You
Absolutely.
know, having somebody show up. So the van pulls up, the people jump in, they go and get Tyler, your husband, and Tyler comes rushing. Yeah. What happens when Tyler gets there?
So I hop in my car. He's driving my car. I hop in the front seat of my car, holding my arm. One of the girls who had the broken wrist jumped in the back seat. And I guess there was a tie down in the back of the side-by-side, so he grabbed the tie down trying to make a tourniquet.
Like the tarp strap that you tie over the truck type thing.
Yeah, like they crank or whatever. Just trying to find anything to tie it off, but I wouldn't let him do it. I don't know, something was telling me, like, this is not the right move, nor did could you really even tell where to do it.
Yeah.
So I just remember the side-by-side, like, sitting at my feet in the front passenger. So I remember he was like kind of checking on the other girls, and I remember being like, Ty, we have got to go now. Like, we have got to go to the emergency room right now. So he hopped in the car, drove literally as fast as I've ever seen him drive in my life.
How fast was he going? Like 120, 130?
I mean, I don't know, probably.
Just as fast as the car would go.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And the girl in the back seat, she called ahead, let the hospital know we were on our way, what had happened. We drove. It was like, to give you some perspective, I think from where we were camping to Payson, Arizona, is normally about probably 45 minutes. And we got there in 20 minutes because the hospital I went to is in Payson.
Okay, so it was in Payson.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So
double time, less than half the time.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. Then do you remember what happened? Like, obviously they put you up for the surgery. Like, you were in anesthesia for that, right?
Yeah.
What do you remember coming into the hospital and like just like that part of it? Like, did Tyler stay with you the whole time, like when you walked through the hospital, or did they like walk you through the door and you just had to like do that part like alone? Like, what was that piece of it like?
So when we got there, we got to the hospital in Payson. For those that don't know, it's a very small mountain town. So their hospital couldn't support that type of trauma. They just couldn't. So, you know, they triaged me. They got me stable. I remember, you know, Ty was there with me the whole time. I remember, like I said earlier, my sweatshirt didn't rip. So when I'm in the emergency room. I'm sitting in the bed, and the nurse goes to cut my sweatshirt off. He gasped, and he said, "Oh my God." Like, he wasn't expecting to see what he saw underneath my arm underneath my sweatshirt rather, because it was
covered and he had no idea.
Yeah.
And that was his initial reaction, the doctor.
Yeah. It was the nurse.
The nurse.
Pretty much. Yeah. And Tyler was like, I remember him being like, "You please don't say things like that. Like, she's already terrified. Like, please don't say things like that." And obviously he apologized, but I remember that so vividly. And so, obviously once they cut it off and they determined how severe it was, they're like, "We can't handle this, like, we'll get her stable." So they flew me by helicopter down to a trauma center here in Phoenix. I tell the story a lot, but they wouldn't let Tyler come in the helicopter with me because it's obviously such tight quarters. But I do remember, ironically, there was like the pilot and like 2 medevac paramedics or whatever. And all 3 of them, their names were Jim.
Three Jims?
3 Jims.
All from Payson. So you're getting in the helicopter, there's 2 paramedics, 1 pilot, they're all Jim.
Yeah, Jim, and Jim. Like, that's literally the only thing I remember from the helicopter
You're in
ride.
good hands.
Yeah, it's just such a funny thing to me. I don't know. I remember, like, actually joking about it. I was so sedated, but, like, I remember
there's a lot of, like, crazy things about this day, like, just the details of it. It's like, wow, like, a lot of, like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Just, like, a lot to take in, too, like, while you're going through all this, like, mentally on you. Like, I get, like, how Tyler was feeling. I'm sure he was, like, stressed because of the unknown, but, like, you're sitting there. It's like, what the hell is going on? Mm-hmm. Like, there's so much, like, change and, like, just, like,
yeah.
You're in a car, you're in a hospital, now you're in a helicopter. Yeah, it's like,
yes.
God.
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of it.
So I landed in Phoenix, and it's where it gets like a little bit spotty because of obviously all the pain medicine. But I remember sitting in the ICU, or I think it was the ICU, and my doctor, or the on-call doctor, came over, and I'll never forget him. He's an angel. Literally, his name is Dr. Reese. He's since moved to Texas, but he told me, he said, "I'm going to do everything I can to save your arm. Everything I can." And I said, "Okay, thank you. What else can I do?"
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. But it was,
yeah,
it was intense to say the least. And so, yeah, I went under for surgery. I came out. I woke up. They were wheeling me back to what I think was back to ICU. And I looked down, and my arm wasn't there. And I asked what, in hindsight, is such an obvious question, but I just had to hear it. I just opened my eyes, and I looked at the nurse that was wheeling me, and I said, "They couldn't save it." And she said, "No, sweetie, I'm sorry." And then I just put my head back down, and I started crying until I fell back asleep.
So you were in the helicopter, then you get... Where did the helicopter drop you to? Sorry, there's just so many details. You're in the helicopter, you left Payson. Where did they fly you to?
Was it a trauma center here in Phoenix.
It was in Phoenix. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. And then when did you lose, like, consciousness? The doctor said that to you when you got to Phoenix. When did everything go dark?
Well, it went dark before I even, like, got on the helicopter.
Okay.
And I think they, like, kind of woke me up to be like, "Hey, we're on the helicopter. Here's your pilot. Here's Jim, and Jim."
Yeah, here's the 2 Jims.
And then I fell asleep for the whole ride, right? And then I think what happened was when I got to the hospital, the doctor woke me up again. So I was, like, in and out probably since Payson.
Oh, that's crazy. And then you come to, and then that, like, moment of, like, realization happens basically after all this, like, stuff that you had just gone through the entire day. And it's, like, probably just, like, too much to bear. Like, just how do you even, like, feel at that point?
I mean, I don't remember what I was feeling. I was so drugged up, like, but there was always peace, like, I don't know how to describe it, but even when we were on our way to the hospital, I just felt peace. Like, it's fine. Everything's fine. If this is what it is, it'll be. Honestly, I remember thinking on the way to the first hospital, like, if this happens, if I lose my arm, everything's going to be okay, because you're going to crack up, because I can still wear my wedding ring on my left hand. And that's what's important.
That's such a positive way to look at it. I think that's a good takeaway right there for people. Like, what do you think in your life had prepared you for that? Like, to feel that way? Because, like, I think that's something that comes from your subconscious. Like, when you're dealing with, like, an extreme situation like that, like, that's something that comes from, like, inside somewhere. What do you think in your life up to that point had prepared you to respond the way that you did and feel the way that you did?
Yeah. I lost my mom to cancer when I was 15. And for a young girl, that's extremely traumatizing. And so prior to her death, I would take care of her. I would fill her pill, cartridges. I would drive her places if she needed to drive, even when I had a permit, right? Like, I just learned what it was like to truly lose something that is so, so very important. And I made it through, right? There was some bad days, of course, but by far good days outweighed. And so I think, I know that's why I've been able to be the way that I am, because I know what loss looks like, and I know that there's life beyond it.
That's incredible. That's a really good answer, actually. You're a great speaker.
Thank you.
This is going to be a good interview.
Yay.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, a lot of people probably don't have that foresight because maybe they haven't had that challenge or that struggle ahead of time to feel that. But I'm glad, like, that's why you are the way you are.
Yeah.
So that happened. You kind of made, like, your peace with that. I know we could talk about this for, like, the next hour, but I kind of want to talk about, like, the recovery process, and what that was like for you. Initially, did it make you question things or, like, lose your faith at all? Like, was there any points where it was, like, questioning, like, why did God do this to me? Like, why did this happen to me?
Yeah. I could honestly say it made me stand stronger in my faith more than I ever had before. I knew that there was a reason why I didn't die. I knew that an angel, or whatever you want to consider it, sent that van there that day to help me get the medical care that I need in the right timing. If anything, I believed in my faith far more afterwards than I ever did prior. And not once did I, wonder, why did this happen to me? Because I know why it happened to me. It's to help others.
So that was always, like, a constant for you. Like, from the beginning, you kind of felt that way and just knew that and embraced that.
Yep.
As a challenge. What do you think in terms of, like, helping another person, whether it's an amputation, whether it's drug addiction, losing a loved one, just something, like, very traumatic, and they're having a tough time, like, rationalizing that in their mind and, like, understanding, like, why? Like, what's something you could say to somebody that would help them just rationalize tragedy, like, immediately after it happens, so they don't go down that very dark path that a lot of people do?
Yeah, it's definitely a slippery slope, this type of feeling. What I would say is, if I was to be standing in front of somebody right now that just suffered some sort of traumatic loss, I would say, first, you need to be sad. Like, it's important to be sad and give yourself time to grieve, whatever that looks like for you. What mistakes I think happen naturally is that you just want to be over it. I'm good. I'm fine. This is fine. I'm fine with it.
Just shut it out.
But you're just really not fine with it.
Yeah, just try to shut it out and just try to, like, move on. When
Yeah.
I actually learned about this too. It's like, if you have a traumatic event, your central nervous system will store it in your body, and then, like, unless you actually release it, like, it never goes away. It will just store itself in there, and then, like, all of your future interactions will you'll react like out of that state of feeling. It's
Absolutely.
crazy.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And so you just got to give yourself the time you need at first, I think. And whatever that looks like for you, right? Whatever makes you feel better, right? Within reason. Nothing crazy. But I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle, is just kind of like sitting in it and like allowing your body to feel and your mind to feel what it is it wants to, because everything just changed, you know? I would say the next piece of it, that's, you know, kind of like step 2, is it is so important to get your mind right. Like, I know it's so easy to say, and I have no background in mental health, not even a little bit, but I can say that it is so important, and it is the deciding factor of whether you're going to allow this trauma to continue to traumatize you, or if you're going to decide that it's not, you know, like this is not going to be what ends me, or it's not going to change me in a negative way, right? So I would say the next thing is just so important to be in your head in a way that drives positive outcomes, like consciously making decisions to help yourself.
I love what you said about like having a conscious decision in your mind, like that this is not going to define me, and that you have to make like that choice of like, one, to deal with it and embrace it, and to not let it define you. We talked about like your family. We talked about like the power of fitness. Like there's a lot of different like layers and tiers, but ahead of all of that, did you do anything different in your life? Like, did you start like doing meditating, like taking trips, or like doing something where like you could think more clearly, or like changing any of your routines up at all?
Honestly, no. If that's what I needed, I would have. But I didn't. I just kind of, I don't know how to explain it well, but I found that the support that I received from the people in my life was so rewarding and so fulfilling to hear what they had to say. You know, like that was kind of what drove me and continued to help me beyond any trip or meditation or anything like that. Like, I don't know how to explain it well, but like just the feedback I got was just incredible and was so very motivating for me. That was like what I got.
Just like the love and the affirmation and the positivity. And you were like fortunate enough to have a circle around you where if you didn't have those things, like you would go and seek them. But since you were fortunate enough to have good friends, to have good family, to have everybody who is willing to build you up and like remind you of who you are, like that, that was the best place for you to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so instrumental.
You weren't supposed to go back to the gym and start working out like 2 weeks after this had all happened, but you did anyways.
Yeah.
And it was Body. I went to Body a couple of times with my buddy. I know it's like a very strong community of people, and like they kind of like stick together. Talk about like the power of fitness and how that. I love fitness. I guess I'll put it this way. I love fitness because every bad thing that's happened to me in life, like that was the constant reminder for me of like who I am. Like if everything else was going to hell in my life, like that was the one thing that I could do.
Yes.
Like, and I could just do it really, really well.
Yeah.
So I'd love to like talk to people, to tell people like about the power of fitness as a constant in your life and how it got you back to a good state of empowerment in yourself.
For sure. Yeah. So prior to the accident, I had been going to the gym 6 days a week, like rain or shine, nothing stopped me 6 days consistently. And so when the accident happened, obviously I wasn't allowed to work out. I didn't mention this, but I also had a knee injury in the accident as well, which was interestingly harder to recover from than my arm. We can get into that later.
It's hard to do squats or do any like thing in your body without your knees.
Yes. And I wasn't allowed to bend it at all. So I was in a brace. Anyway, so once I got the go ahead from my doctor, like he was hesitant, but he figured she's been doing this for years, every single day.
Yeah.
She probably knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
So, but that didn't stop my circle from being like, Diana, you're crazy. this just happened 2 weeks ago. You should not go to the gym. And I'm like, I'm going.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. I gotta go.
I'm so sorry. I appreciate your opinion, but I gotta go. And you gotta drive me.
Because I can't bend my knee.
Yeah. So long story short, I mean, yeah, you mentioned it. My gym community has been so empowering. And for those that don't know, the gym that I go to is a HIIT gym. It's high intensity interval training, and it's amazing. The community there has been just top notch. It's very cool to see it. And then it's another thing to be a part of it.
Yeah, Nikki Metzger's intense.
Love her.
Yeah,
that's my girl. Yeah.
Like, ah.
Yeah. She's got energy like no other.
Yeah.
It's the best. So speaking of Nikki, she offered to just kind of train me one-on-one. Obviously, I couldn't go back to a normal class and hold people up. They'd probably be like, what are you doing? Get out of here. Or maybe they feel bad. I don't know. But she opened the gym to me and just had me just go through some very basic, not really even strenuous stuff, like some rope things, some body weight things, a lot of cable stuff, like why am I blanking?
Like the cable band, you attach
Bands.
the cable. Yeah,
Bands. Yeah. At one point, once I got better, I had like a weighted vest and I would do my stuff. But it was 17 days after the accident, I went back to the gym. And then I think I went like maybe 3 times a week. And like no gym owner does that, you know?
Yeah. Well, they have to care about you a lot in order to do that, which is nice. What would you say to somebody that doesn't have a strong circle? So I loved what you had said about making a conscientious choice, that it's not going to define you and that you're going to deal with it. But say they don't have that medium to deal with it, and now they're going through tragedy. How do you find something like that?
So I would first say you got to be your own circle. You got to be your own hype man. You know, like if you don't have that support, and a lot of people don't, you just got to stand firm and you know what you need. And if you can't find it, you got to give it to yourself. Second, a more realistic answer is I'd be willing to bet that whatever somebody's going through, they're not the first one to go through it. And there's many, many, many types of support groups and resources out there for people that are in a very, very similar situation to you. And so I would encourage people to try and find that. You know, one of the things that I sought out for, you know, after the accident was just like, how can I find a young girl who has an amputation like mine? That was all I was looking for. And I found one.
Just one.
Yeah. And so, but then that opened my mind to be like, well, it doesn't have to be just like me, you know? And so I found groups, and I found, you know, a community on Instagram and Facebook. And, you know, as terrible as social media can be, it really can be powerful in that way to connect people. And then I started finding local amputees, and different adaptive fitness centers, and it kind of snowballs from there. Once you know to kind of look, then it just kind of presents itself. And those people, you'd be surprised, you know, people truly show their colors in situations like that, and they want to help you no matter what.
So being in tune with yourself and knowing what you need, and being willing to go out and look for it and get it.
Yeah.
Because I agree with technology. Like, I hate social media. I'm doing this to offset the effects of social media, honestly, because I'm like, wow, this is terrible. But it is good for connecting and like finding things and finding information. Like YouTube, you can go and you can find things like this. Like, our parents didn't have this. It didn't exist. You couldn't just go and like
read a book,
figure out how to, you had to look at index cards at a library.
Exactly.
So it's crazy. And I think that's a really like easy applicable thing for people to do. You feel like you had more gratitude? Like, do you feel like when you were working out and just the ability to work out, like, did you feel like a higher sense of like gratitude at that point?
Absolutely. Like, you know, it's kind of cliche, but I didn't have to work out. I got to work out. You know, when that's taken away from you and it's such a strong piece of your life, you realize like, man, I could do pull-ups before the accident. Now I have to do a very modified type right? Or, you know, there's certain exercises that I have to modify that I'll never be able to get the full benefit of doing, right? And so that alone, you know, fitness, if you want to like just tuck it into just fitness related, I'm so grateful, so incredibly grateful that I have the ability to move my body still and do everything that I used to.
You know, it's crazy. I interviewed a guy at a former company probably like a year ago now. He runs marathons and he's beaten cancer like multiple times.
Wow.
And he said the same thing that you just said. He said, I get to do that. And like he was talking about like running, and it was the same thing. He was like going through his cancer treatment and they were telling him you can't run. And he was running to get through it. So it's like, it's eerily, because like he had like an appreciation. Like, I don't care how hard it seems or how like difficult it might seem. Like I want to do this while I have like the opportunity to still do this. And it gives like a newfound perspective of like, we just take so much for granted. And I think I do too. I mean, it's so easy to do that. It's just to take things for granted. So, I love how you just recrafted that and took that into a sense of gratitude. And I think that goes well, I guess, to talk about like your brand now and kind of like your purpose and your why, which is Diana Adapted, your brand that you've created to help people. And you know, it's been a long time. It's been like 5 or 6 years since this had happened to you. Like it's taken a lot of time, you know, for you to get to this point in your mind. What have you learned about yourself in this process that you brought into the brand? And what can you speak about in terms of articulating the purpose that you said to me on the phone when we chatted?
Yeah. So I knew that this happened to me for a reason. It didn't happen to me for me to continue on living my life the same way I was before. And I decided, and it took me 6 years to figure this out. Like I'm celebrating my 6th anniversary of the accident this June. And I always knew, like, even from, you know, being in the point of the hospital, I'm like, this happened to me for a reason. Like, and I got to figure out why. What is it? Like, I got to put my finger on it. And so I think it was last September, I'm like, I'm doing it. I sat down.
So not even a year ago.
Not even a year ago, no. I sat down with one of my best friends. We went out to lunch, and I told her, I'm like, I'm feeling like I need to do this. And she was like, do it. Like, do it now. Start it now. And I did. I literally went home and I did. And so I started pretty much a social media platform. It's called Diana Adapted. It's on all the social networks. And it's really just designed to empower and inspire other people to know that whatever obstacle they're facing, they can overcome it with what they've already got inside of them. They don't need to, but they can. Search anywhere. Like the strength that our bodies and us as human beings have on the inside, mentally specifically, is so incredibly powerful. But most people don't have to tap into it because they just don't have to.
Yeah,
but there's
not a necessity.
Right. And then there's some of us that it's like fight or flight, right? And you have to do it and you have to figure out if you want to live a quality life and continue to be as independent and mobile as you are or as you can be. It's so important to know that about yourself. Like, human beings are incredible. And so I do, chalk up a lot of my strength to the loss of my mom, but that only brought me so far, right? And so there's all this other stuff that has helped me, that came from within me. And so my goal with Diana Adapted is to show others that they can do it too. I've said it before on a different podcast, but my favorite quote in the entire world is you've been assigned this mountain to show others that it can be moved. And I truly, truly, truly believe that is what I was brought here for. Even when I had two arms, it was just a matter of time before God put this in my path, and here I am talking about it.
So what is your purpose statement? If you could summarize your purpose statement.
That's such a hard question.
Has anyone ever asked you that?
I kind of think it's if I can do it, you can do it. Like truly, I think my limitations is physical. A lot of people it's not, or it is, you know.
I'd say for 90% of people, it's mental.
Yeah.
And they don't even know it.
Yeah. But for me, it's you're physically able to see me do things that are hard for people with two arms or 4 limbs, right? And it's almost easy to show visually, like, look, I can do this. I'm doing it. And so can you. And so that's kind of my purpose.
It's amazing what people can do after they've seen it done in front of them, like
Yeah.
specifically in sports or like something like physically where people had never run like a sub 5-minute mile. And then once they did that, like hundreds of people were doing it. It's like something in your brain after you see it physically done. It's like
I can do it.
We can do so much more than we give ourselves credit for. And like really what limits do we have? I mean, other than being like physically 6'5" and playing in the NBA, because I can't control that, like a lot of things you can control doing. So I think that's so cool, and I think that's a great, I guess, purpose statement. This is kind of a heavy question. If you could go back to that day and change it, would you? If you could go back to that day and change the amputation, would you do it over and get your arm back, or would you do things the way you're doing it now?
I absolutely would not change a thing. That's so hard for people to understand. It's provided me a strength and a confidence. I know people are not going to understand that either, but that could never have been taught in like any other way. My parents couldn't teach it to me. My career couldn't teach it to me. My fitness couldn't teach it to me. Nobody could teach this level of strength to me. And I was fortunate to be given it. I don't know how to I know it's hard for people to get it because they're like, why would you choose to struggle, or why would you choose to live your life with one arm? But I truly would not change a thing, and it's given me more than it's taken.
One of my favorite quotes is a short one. It's the only way out is through.
Yeah.
And like you try to run from things and you try to change things, and there's no running from it unless you go through it. Like you're not going to do it. And whether that's your career, whether that's fitness, whether that's whatever goal is in front of you, unless you're going to be willing to go through the hardship and go through the struggle, like you're not going to do that. And I think that is what people need to know is like, it's not about the physical arm. It's about what you've learned in the process and what you've learned about yourself and the person that you are now and all that you're able to give to people in that process.
Absolutely. It's so important.
So,
yeah.
I don't know if this will be redundant. I always finish it off, the weekly intention, like asking people, like based on your entire experience, everything that you've learned in this journey, like what's the number one thing you would take and give to somebody that they could just use in their life, in their day-to-day, that would have an immediate impact?
Yeah, I would say it's so important to try to see the positive. And I know that's cliche, but it's truly what's gotten me to where I am today with everything that's happened to me is, what is this teaching me, to your point, right? And how am I going to be better because of it? And what's the silver lining? Like, let's find the silver lining in here. Like, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. I don't want to like mislead anybody. There's hard times, don't get me wrong, right? But 80% of the time, I'm always trying to find what is the positive in this situation. And so that's what I would tell others if they're dealing with anything, really. Like, just try and figure out what's the benefit? This seems like it sucks right now, but like in time or tomorrow, what is it that's going to, what's the good in it? That's what I would say. It's hard. It's not easy.
I love that. It's super impactful, and I couldn't say it better myself. So this has been awesome. I've loved this. It's truly just been a really good conversation with like just a lot of things that people can take. And I love how you articulate your story. And I think this is going to help a lot of people. So thank you so much for being here. Guys, as always, just like this, share this, subscribe, get this out to people. I'm going to include all of Diana's social channels in the YouTube link. So check her out there. And until next time, this is Michael and Diana. with Weekly Intention. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.